Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into one of the absolute most complex, wild, and heavily debated sagas in modern sports history. We're unpacking the incredible timeline of Indian wrestler Vinesh Phogat. And look, this isn't just a story about sports. It's a profound human interest saga that crashes right into intense institutional conflict, national politics, and the relentless pursuit of an Olympic dream. So whether you're a longtime follower of international wrestling or you're just trying to make sense of all the recent headlines, let's break down exactly what happened, step by step.
Really think about this for a second. How on earth does a champion go from leading national protests to experiencing this devastating Olympic heartbreak to literally being elected to political office and then winding right back up in a bitter federation standoff, all in just 5 years? It's a staggering series of shifts. The sheer scale of Vinesh Phogat's journey between 2021 and 2026 completely defies your traditional sports narrative. We're talking massive highs, crushing lows, and a systemic tug-of-war that has captivated an entire nation. To truly grasp how we arrived at today's standoff, we've got to trace the thread all the way back to where the friction first started.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Part 1. The Roots of Conflict from 2021 to 2022.
So, rolling the timeline back a bit, before the massive protests hit the international news cycle, the initial clashes were really rooted in what we can call rulebook friction. Right after the Tokyo Olympics, new mandates were introduced. The Wrestling Federation essentially made domestic national championships mandatory for all star wrestlers. Now, on paper, sure, it was just a rule change, but in practice, it immediately sparked tension. Top-tier athletes, specifically Vinesh Phogat, Bajrang Punia, and Sakshi Malik, sought exemptions so they could train internationally. Well, those exemptions were firmly denied. This administrative hardline led to some intense frustration, with the athletes claiming they were living under a dictatorship. Vinesh Phogat explicitly alleged that the federation was basically weaponizing these new rules to punish independent athletes who wouldn't just fall in line with localized demands.
And right at the center of the institutional side of this dispute was WFI chief Brij Bhushan Sharan Singh. The wrestlers alleged that under his leadership, the federation was actively targeting them. You see, the denial of international training camps wasn't viewed by the athletes as just standard procedure. They framed it as a deliberate, targeted squeeze on their careers. This fundamental breakdown in trust over administrative rules, that was the dry tinder for what was about to happen next.
Now, watch how fast this escalates. By January of 2023, the situation completely exploded into public view. This wasn't about training exemptions anymore. Top wrestlers staged a massive sit-in at Jantar Mantar in New Delhi. The controversy had dramatically shifted from a dispute over rules to severe legal and moral battles. The core allegation here was devastating: systemic sexual harassment by the WFI chief against several female wrestlers. The athletes, with Phogat really leading the charge, demanded the immediate dissolution of the Wrestling Federation of India and the arrest of the chief. This eventually led to Supreme Court intervention and formal police reports being filed. It was just an unprecedented moment in Indian sports, athletes taking a direct, highly public stand against their own governing body.
What's absolutely crucial to take away from this specific period is how rapidly the issues spilled off the wrestling mat. It became a massive socio-political movement. First off, you had the Khat Panchayats, these very influential social councils in Haryana, stepping in and issuing strict ultimatums to the government to protect their daughters. Second, powerful farmer unions, specifically the Samyukta Kisan Morcha, linked the wrestlers' struggle to the broader farmers' movement. They framed the narrative so powerfully as Kisan ki beti, the daughter of the farmer, versus the political establishment. And third, this escalated to threats of total social boycotts in Jat-dominated regions against any politicians who refused to stand with the protesting athletes. So, what started as an institutional sports dispute had fully transformed into a regional and national political firestorm.
Moving forward, Part 2, the Olympic Dream and Political Turn.
Even amidst all this intense social upheaval, the athletes still had their eyes set on Paris. And here, you just have to let this single metric sink in: 100 grams. It is literally the weight of a small apple, a handful of loose change. On the morning of her historic 50-kilogram gold medal bout in Paris 2024, Vinesh Phogat was disqualified for being exactly 100 grams over the weight limit. After battling through an unimaginably stressful 2 years, taking down a reigning undefeated Olympic champion in the early rounds, and finally securing her spot in the final, her Olympic dream ended on a scale. It was a heartbreaking,
devastating technicality that shocked the global sports community and truly left a nation in tears.
But, despite that profound heartbreak in Paris, the story didn't end there. She returned to India not in defeat, but to an absolute hero's welcome. The public clearly recognized the immense physical and emotional toll of her journey. Capitalizing on this massive wave of public support, and honestly, probably driven by her firsthand experiences battling systemic institutional structures, Phogat made a highly pivotal decision. She decided to formally transition into public service.
In late 2024, she officially joined the Indian National Congress. She contested the Haryana Assembly elections from the Jalana seat, and she won. This was a historic legislative victory. It meant she was now a sitting member of the Legislative Assembly, an MLA. She had stepped directly into the halls of power that she had once protested against in the streets. But get this, she wasn't done with wrestling. She announced her intent to balance her new legislative duties with a return to professional wrestling, specifically targeting the Asian Games.
Which brings us to Part 3, the 2026 Gonda standoff.
And that brings us right to the present day, May 2026, setting the stage for a totally new collision course. Now, what's really fascinating here is how perfectly the circumstances of the past contrast with the reality of today. Let's just walk through this side-by-side comparison for a second. Back in 2023, the primary issue was grave allegations of sexual harassment. Today, in 2026, the primary issue is a bitter dispute over eligibility rules and claims of indiscipline. Look at the leadership. In 2023, it was Brij Bhushan Sharan Singh. In 2026, the WFI is led by Sanjay Singh, who is widely recognized as a staunch loyalist to Brij Bhushan. And perhaps most crucially, look at Phogat's status. In 2023, she was an active athlete and protester. Today, she is a sitting political official, an actual MLA, trying to make a comeback. The flashpoint has moved from the streets of Jantar Mantar to her sudden exclusion from a wrestling tournament in Gonda. The players are very similar, but the power dynamics have completely flipped.
So, let's break down the exact arguments causing today's gridlock, looking neutrally at both sides. The WFI's stance is strictly procedural. They state that Phogat failed to give the mandatory 6-month notice required for retired athletes returning to the sport. On top of that, they formally barred her until June 26, 2026, citing indiscipline and arguing that her disqualification in Paris actually damaged the reputation of Indian wrestling. On the flip side, Phogat's position is completely contradictory. She points out she has official clearance from the International Testing Agency and WADA, stating she is fully eligible to compete as of January 1, 2026. She alleges that her exclusion from the Gonda tournament is a rigged conspiracy. She's quick to point out that Gonda is the stronghold of former chief Brij Bhushan, claiming this administrative red tape is simply a targeted effort to prevent her from reaching the Asian Games trials.
And that leaves us with this massive lingering question. As the Asian Games draw closer, how is this unprecedented clash going to finally resolve? We are literally watching a sitting politician attempt to wrestle her way past a governing body that clearly views her as an existential threat to their authority. Will the rulebook prevail, or will the sheer weight of public and political pressure force the Federation's hand? It's a standoff where sports, politics, and institutional power are just inextricably linked. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. You're definitely going to want to keep a very close eye on how this incredible saga unfolds next.